Hey guys, Allison here with Lofty Loops Yarns and Lofty Loops on Instagram, and I just wanted to give you guys a quick tutorial on how I knit my toe-up socks using the magic loop method and a Turkish cast on. And I actually do a little trick for the increases that I'd like to share with you. I use the yarn over increases instead of using a make one left, make one right, because they're easier for me to remember which row I'm on, and it's just less for me to have to think about as I'm knitting on my toes. So if that's something that you guys are interested in learning how to do, stick with me and check this tutorial out. Thanks! Okay, as I mentioned, I'm going to be showing you how to do this on a circular needle. This is a 24-inch Chiaogoo red lace needle in a US size 2 or 2.75 millimeter needle. It is my preferred method, and actually I prefer a US size 1, but my 2s were open, so that's what I went ahead and used for the tutorial. And you'll see here I have a cake of hand-dyed yarn, and it is a sock yarn, so it's a superwash merino nylon blend. And you want to take the end, your working yarn, and make just a little slip knot in the end. And this slip knot you are going to want to place on your needles. So once you have your slip knot, pick up the needles and I stack them. I slip the slip knot onto the bottom needle and tighten it up just enough to where it's not going to slide around on me. You can leave the tail hanging free and wrap towards you, behind the back and towards you, around both needles. And I do this 14 times typically. Sometimes I'll do 16. It's really completely up to you, but I like to stick to 14 just because it's the first number that pops into my head. But 16 does not make that much of a difference. You can play around with this number and do what works best for you. So you'll see here I'm just counting the loops that I wrapped around the needles to make sure that I have the correct number on there. And you'll notice that the loops aren't too terribly tight, but they do have a bit of tension to them. So you'll want them to move nice and easily on you. Once you have the amount of loops on your needles that you prefer, go ahead and pull out the bottom needle and place it between the cord and your top needle. Wrap the yarn around the cord and knit off that top needle as usual. And continue moving on, and you'll want to knit all of those loops off the needle. And it does get quite fiddly. It's just something that you're going to want to practice and get the hang of. The loops are fairly loose, but I like to keep even tension as much as possible to avoid holes in the ends of my toes. So again, if you need to practice this a few times, that's totally fine. It's still quite fiddly to me. So please don't feel bad if it takes you a little while to get the hang of. But I promise it's like riding a bike. Once you get it, you'll be off and running. Okay, so once you come to the last loop, go ahead and knit that off, and then you'll want to turn the set of needles towards your right. So the stitches you just worked are on that bottom needle now, and feed the cord through the top loops to put the top needle back in, and then pull out the bottom needle that you've just knitted onto and do the same thing across the top. And at this point, I like to grab that little tail from earlier, and I knit them both together. And that, you don't have to do this. You can wait and weave in your ends once you're all completed, once you have your completed sock. But this is just a little extra step I like to do because I'm not a huge fan of weaving in ends. So if I just hold them together as I knit about the first 5 or 6 stitches, I find at the end I can just cut that off and I don't have to worry about weaving in another end. So at this point I've knit about 6 stitches, so I'm going to drop that extra tail and I will eventually cut the excess off. So I'm just going to continue with my working yarn all the way across the top. Once you have knitted all of those loops off your top needle, turn it again to the right, always to the right, so your cable is coming out the left side, and feed that needle back through. Now you've done the Turkish cast on and you're ready to start your toe increases. So again, we want to pull the bottom needle, knit that first stitch, and then instead of making a make one right or make one left, I yarn over here and knit across to the last stitch. And this is just something that I've learned how to do, so I don't have to try to remember whether or not I'm on an increased row. It gets really obvious once you've hit a yarn over, or if perhaps a yarn over doesn't exist, then you know you need to create one on that round. I have a bad habit of watching TV or Netflixing while I do this, so I don't pay as close of attention, and then I end up increasing too many times or not enough. So again, hit the last stitch, I yarn over before knitting that last stitch on the needle, and turn your work to the right, pull that cord on through, and do the same thing one more time. And actually, don't do like me, but you can see here right by my thumb that I did not pull that first slip knot off, so I actually have 15 stitches on the top needle. So don't be like me. When you get to that slip knot, just go ahead and pull it off and continue as normal. So knit the first stitch, yarn over, and knit to the end, and you have one stitch left. Yarn over again, knit the last stitch off. So we're at the last one, yarn over, knit that last stitch. So now you've increased both sides by 2 stitches. Feed your cord back on through, and now we're going to knit across. We don't want to increase again, we just want to knit those yarn overs. So you'll pull the bottom needle out, knit the first stitch, and you'll notice that yarn over from before, we want to go ahead and knit that, but we don't want to knit it as we typically would knit a yarn over, because that would leave big open holes, and we don't want that. So this is wrong. You want to knit through the back loop. So I like to put it on that right needle and kind of flip it around so I can get that back loop on the needle. So knit the yarn over through the back loop. And you'll see it again here at the end of this row. So again, if you knit that front loop as you would normally knit a stitch and it's a yarn over, you're going to end up with a hole. So try to remember that you want to knit all yarn overs through the back loop, and that will close it up. So there again, there's the yarn over. I don't want that front stitch or the front of the stitch, I want the back loop. And just practice, and it'll become second nature. So now you can see we've got a little bit of a toe forming here. And if you pull quite tightly as you're turning and knitting those first stitches, You might have to work a bit to get your needle back into the loops, but you should be okay. I like to pull and give just a bit of a tug on those first stitches so I don't have any ladders or gapping on the sides. But don't pull so tight that you have to really work to get that needle back in. So you can see here I knit the first stitch, knit the yarn over through the back loop, and knit across. And after you finish this row and you go to turn your work, you will have all knit stitches with no yarn over. So that is how you know that you are now on another increase row. And that's kind of my cue. If I see that yarn over in that second stitch position, I know that I'm not on a yarn or an increase row, I'm sorry. And if I do have a yarn over, then I know that I just increased and I need to go ahead and knit across. And you'll just continue in that manner, knitting all the stitches, and then on the next round you yarn over, increase, and then you knit all the stitches and you yarn over, increase until you've increased to your preferred size. So I hope you guys found that helpful or interesting to learn how I typically like to do my toe up socks on Magic Loop. If you guys want written instructions, you can check out my go-to simple toe up sock guide available on Ravelry or my website at loftyloopsyarns.com. If you guys would like me to continue working up the sock and show you guys how I do heels, let me know down below. If you guys have any questions at all, leave them down below and I will try to answer them as quickly as I can. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did find this helpful or interesting, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to find out when I have uploaded new videos or my weekly podcast. Happy knitting, guys!